Alright, how's it guys? Hope everyone is having a beautiful Saturday morning. This video is gonna be about my first impressions so far with the Autel EVO Lite Plus. So I was contemplating buying another drone, meaning an Autel, because I had an issue with my EVO 2 Pro 6K Enterprise, and now I needed a backup drone. So I needed something without geofencing ideally, and I figured Nano probably wasn't the call. The EVO 2 Pro 6K bundles are $2,500, so that was probably a little bit more than I wanted to spend. The Mini 3 has geofencing, even though I know it's a good drone, but at the same time I wanted to do something that was probably a little bit easier on the bank. They actually had a Father's Day sale, and then I came across someone selling one of their drones. They had a Lite Plus premium bundle in orange in the box, sold it to me for $1,350. I got Autel Care on it, so basically $1,500 was my cost on the premium bundle with Autel Care, so actually not too bad. But do I dare say this drone is actually probably almost the perfect real estate drone? So this drone, I don't know if you guys shoot real estate at all, but when you have any kind of issue when you're near an airport and geofencing is in place, that can be a real pain in the ass. And if you don't have geofencing and you're just flying 100 foot, you don't have to deal with anything unlocking. You can get a few shots, call it a day, and move on. So it is a real thing when you're shooting real estate to have to mess around with that. And to me, I just don't want to even have that in this scenario. So no geofencing for a real estate drone is mandatory in my opinion. But regardless, this drone feels a lot better than, say, the Nano Plus or the Nano. The Nano felt really cheap. This thing feels actually like a normal type drone and feels a lot more comparable to, say, maybe an EVO 2 Pro 6K, especially because this EVO Lite Plus has a 6K camera. So basically the identical camera as the EVO 2 Pro and EVO 2 Pro Enterprise. But it does not shoot 10-bit, which is kind of sad, but apparently even Ken Booth was saying this supposedly does do a little bit better in low light, so I'm excited to try that out because the EVO 2 Pro 6K, as you've seen in some of my videos, does extremely well in low light, especially when you're shooting 6K normal. And I'm not really overly concerned with the no 10-bit because to me the 6K 8-bit holds up extremely well, the color grading and the post work, and it just looks almost as good as the 4K 10-bit. So I would be shooting in 6K regardless of having 10-bit on this Lite Plus, so there's that. But I wanted to walk through also the Sky app because it's not perfect, but I wanted to just give you a little introductory to some of the things that I like and some of the things that I don't like. The batteries on this thing, it just seems like a more complete drone. The Nano Plus, it felt very cheap and plasticky, and this one has a more solid, let me get this battery off, build. So you can see, almost looks like a little slipper, but it's not, it's a drone. And I flew one first job yesterday just to shoot a home, and I went through one battery and essentially got my shots, just stills, nothing major, but it did really well. I was able to use the 5 bracket, which I use a lot of times when I'm shooting real estate. I'll shoot JPEG 5 bracket, and then I can kind of composite and post with something like Aurora HDR or some program like that. But regardless, so far this drone is really nice and I can't see having a lot of complaints. It feels very similar to an EVO 2 Pro. So if you have flown an EVO 2 Pro series drone, Autel, you'll not be that different as far as the experience with this guy. And that's kind of what I was hoping with the Nano Plus compared to like a Mini, but the Nano Plus just seemed to fail on a lot of levels. That's just my opinion. I don't really love that drone. I think it's kind of a fail, but regardless, a lot of people do like it, so for that, awesome. But let's get this guy in the air and we'll see what the actual app is like, and I'll start a screen recording and we'll go from there. But if you see too, the controller for the Lite and the Lite Plus and the Nano and the Nano Plus is this kind of Xbox-ish type controller, and I don't really love it. It's not horrible, but it's definitely not as nice as the Mini 2 controller and, you know, that standard controller we use for the Mavic Air 2 and the Air 2S. This is the Skyfire aerial rig. That kind of adds a little bit of rigidity. It adds a place for the sticks if you do need to take it off. But again, there's pros and cons when you put this on. Now you have a place for the sticks, but you don't have a place for your bag because you have this whole contraption. So I just carry this in a separate soft bag with maybe another spare battery. So the remote is decent, but it's not amazing, but it could be worse and it could be better. So we'll see what happens. You realize when you're shooting videos, life is really loud. It's hard to do when you have a lot of distractions. I don't like doing videos where there's people, but this is a nice open area to fly where I don't feel too distracted other than the noise and the people that walk by. But I'm by the river over here and I can kind of fly and not have any real concern because it's a safe zone. But let's get this guy in the air. And when you power this on for the first time, you long press and that's it. So one press, drone will power on, open the props up so it puts a little less resistance on the props when you go ahead and start it. And I just noticed, what is this? Oh, it's a shadow, I think. Always inspect your props too, because sometimes you may not notice, maybe they get clipped by something or maybe you just do something, but always inspect the props, make sure there's nothing going wrong with the integrity of them. And another good thing to do before you're flying your EVO 2 Pros or your Lite Plus or any drone really is to do that auto gimbal calibration. So that would be something I suggest. And I kind of jinxed myself, I think, because my 13 Pro Max for the first time when I was flying, at least with the Sky app, actually force dimmed on me. So I've been talking about it. I did a video recently. I had no issue with the Fly app or the Go 4 app, but for some reason with the Sky app, it force dimmed, and that was the first time, and it wasn't even that hot out yesterday considering in the morning, so I'm not sure. I'm kind of a little bit annoyed that it did finally force dim, so that's where the smart controller does come into play. But again, the Autel smart controller is a pain in the butt. It's really big, but for the Mini 3, for example, for $150, I definitely would buy the Mini 3 Pro with the smart controller, and that's that. I got this little AGOZ cable, which works out really well. It's this braided cable and gets out of the way. You depress the power button on the remote once, and then that's it. And then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start a screen recording, and I'll kind of walk you through the app a teeny bit. So let me go ahead and start the screen recording. Okay, so we're starting the screen recording. I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit and then my brightness down a little bit to not get hopefully overheated, because that really does kind of throw, you know, a stick in your spoke, whatever you want to say. I don't know. It really messes everything up when you get your force dim thing to happen, because you really can't see your display and it kind of renders you useless, as I've said a bunch of times, which is why smart controllers are great for that purpose. But regardless, pros and cons to everything. But let's go ahead and get into the Sky app. So we're going to click that, and we're going to go ahead and hit start. You can see we got an image in the top upper right hand corner. And so you guys know, in the top upper left hand corner, that A, if I click that A and I go into profile, and you're trying to connect to your drone, you can go to connect new aircraft right over here, and this will walk you through connecting your Nano Plus, your Lite, or your Lite Plus. So be aware of that in the Sky app. I'm not going to get into every single thing in this app because it will be too long of a tutorial, but I want to just kind of walk through some of the basics and some of the things that I think are good and some of the things I think that aren't so good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. And one of the first things, if I go in the top upper right hand corner, there's that little gear. I'm going to hit that. That's the settings area. I can go to camera, or not camera, control. Is it control for the gimbal? Okay, here, gimbal calibration, auto calibration. So you go ahead and hit this before every flight, or every time you maybe take out the drone for the first time during the day, and I think you'll have a better experience. Some people were saying they had issues with their camera and they were resetting the camera every time they've went and flew, but I haven't run into anything yet because I haven't flown this a bunch. So Just be aware people are doing that. I'm hoping there isn't any reason to do that, but we'll see. So gimbal calibration is going through. I'm putting it on a level surface. It's saying do not power off the aircraft, and it should go ahead and be successful. So now we have that. So let's go ahead and go to safety. I turned off novice mode. If you are a novice or beginning, you can keep that on. That's going to limit your altitude and everything and just kind of keep you a little bit safer and not, you know, in any kind of scary zone that you're not comfortable with. So I went ahead and set my max altitude higher because sometimes I fly higher, but that's pretty high. 1,600 feet is not the norm. Maybe there's a couple places in the city I can fly that, but it's still very high. So anyway, I just put that so I didn't have a limit to mess with. Distance limit, I set to no limit, and it's hard to see, but you can actually slide it to where it says no limit, so you're aware. Return to home, you could always change based on where you're at and your surroundings, but for most instances, I find 200 feet does work pretty well. It's gonna get past power lines and trees and towers, so 200 feet is what I have that set to. Home point I'm not messing with, but you can go ahead and set it to me or the actual aircraft, or you can customize, which I don't even know, I've never done before. Signal lost, it's going to return to home, which is, I think, the best thing to do. Compass calibration is obviously to calibrate the compass. We got IMU calibration. Even I should probably do it if it's been shipped, for example. Even me, if I'm just receiving the drone and the drone went through shipping, it's probably not a bad thing to do the IMU calibration, but I didn't do it yet. Battery information is going to give you just that, battery information. I'm going to keep my critical set to the lowest, to 8%, because I don't want it doing anything like forced landing until the very last minute. So I want to get as much time on the battery if I do run into a situation where I need more time. And I keep my low battery warning at 20%. Battery protection is on. Battery health 100%. 0 discharge times. It's a brand new drone. And then we're going to go into, what else is there? Locate my drone, which we hope we don't use. We got advanced settings. I'm going to keep auxiliary bottom light on auto, but just be aware you can keep it on flashing so it's strobe. So sometimes if you're flying maybe at night and you just want to keep a better eye on your drone, you can keep it flashing to every 1 second so you can see visually what's going on. And then you can turn off the LEDs if you want and take off an attitude mode, for example, if you do want to fly indoors. I've used this a couple times so far, just playing around and testing it. But let's go ahead and not get too much into these settings because I want to go through more of the app than actually all the settings. I'll do that in another video. I'm going to keep the units in imperial, which is miles per hour. We have command stick mode, mode 2, which is the norm, and flight mode. We can change each flight mode. Right now I have smooth, basically set cinematic mode to gimbal pitch 2 and aircraft turn speed 17 for the moment. I'm still dialing this in. I really didn't mess with this, but it would be nice if they had a smoothness setting like the Fly app, but not yet. But we'll see, hopefully in future updates. I'm gonna keep, and I don't know why this changed, but normally single tap is 90 degrees, double tap I keep to the speed mode. So I don't know why that reset. Maybe it was when I did the firmware update, but a lot of times I've found in these Autel apps, settings kind of reset themselves to the default parameters, and I'm not sure why, but little things like that seem to happen, and it's kind of frustrating because you don't know why. I set this exactly like it is now to the gimbal pitch and the speed mode the other day, yesterday, and I'm not sure why it reverted back. We got gimbal mode. I'm going to keep the gimbal pitch adjustment enabled so I can go a little bit higher. And really that's about it for this camera. We have an SD card in there. We can format it. I think I'm going to format it and start fresh. There we go. Format successful. And I'm going to keep my grids enabled. So this is basically the rule of thirds and all that. I want that enabled. Photo, I'm going to make sure I have JPEG plus RAW, and that's kind of it for the moment. I mean, you can play around with all this. I don't know why the histogram was turned off too, so I had the histogram turned on. I'm going to make sure that's turned on because that's really important as a photographer to take pictures. Image transmission, I'm not going to mess with. And then about, we can check our firmware, make sure the battery and everything is current. And so you know when you're using an Autel, each battery needs to get updated individually when you put it into the drone. So just make sure if you put a new battery in after a firmware update, you update that battery and let it run through. It's not going to go ahead and re-update all the firmware. It's just going to do the battery and kind of get that current, and that's that. But let's go ahead and launch this thing. And we have, right next to the A in the top upper right, we have our smooth. We can tap that, standard, and ludicrous. I'm going to make sure I'm still screen recording. I am. I'm going to take off in standard mode. And you can see here, drone.
Gimbal is self-checking.
That's kind of annoying.
Please take off
the
later.
gimbal self-checking thing. I don't know why it does that, but we're going to try to force ride that and click that. And then now it says safe to fly. So it should be good to go. Kind of has a weird little start, which is interesting.
Home point has been
Let me get
refreshed.
this thing out of the way. So that beeping, it would be nice to disable, but I don't think there's a way to disable the audio signals. So what you do is just turn down the volume. The audio signal, there usually is a setting under controller safety, I thought. I think it's under safety, where you can turn off that, but I don't see it in the Sky app. I don't know, I know it's an option in one of the apps, but for now, just mute it. And you can also, here, let's go ahead and walk through the app. Here's my histogram. I can move it around by just tapping it. I have the A, which is going to get me into the beginning part of the app. We have standard, which is our flight modes. We can tap that. Ludicrous is going to be the fastest mode. Smooth is going to be a cinematic mode. And then standard is going to be essentially our normal mode. We have safe to fly, we have safe to fly, it's showing the current status. We have our remote control battery level, we're at 79%. We have the RC signal strength. Whoop, let me tap that. It's not going to show anything, but we have a good signal to the remote. We have satellites, we have 20 satellites. We have our battery life, we have 80% battery life going. So if we tap that, it's going to bring us into our battery health information. Then we have the area, that little green thing is to disable. Here, hold on a second. That little green thing to the upper right-hand corner next to the settings icon is to disable obstacle avoidance. So we're going to go ahead and click that for the moment. And then we have our settings area, which we can get into, which we did and kind of looked through already. We're going to stay out of that. Below that, there's those two little bars. That's going to allow us to set our photo resolution. And it's going to show you auto exposure bracket. We have 5 or 3, but I don't know if it's supposed to not. Let me see something. If we go in the camera, we have, okay, JPEG plus RAW. Let me see if it does shoot 5 pictures. So it's shooting 5 JPEG plus RAW. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So it's shooting 1 JPEG, 1 RAW. So that's good. It actually shoots the auto exposure bracket. Oh, but it's in auto mode. That's what it is. Auto exposure. If you see to the bottom right, it says auto. And I don't know why. Normally on the bottom of these modes, there was a pro mode. And there's not pro anymore. It's night. So this is new to me. But if you go into... Now, mind you, as a photographer, if I go into shoot, which is kind of not, I think it would be nicer if it was pro. If I click auto, we have the white balance, and I think we just have to click the auto button, and that will essentially throw us into pro mode. No? Okay, so that didn't work. Let me see. How do I get out of auto? There we go. I think now it will work. There, now it's in pro mode. So you got to basically throw it out of the settings, meaning here, I just don't think this is an intuitive app, personally. Let me go over here again. Like, it's not intuitive to me to go to the bottom and have to tap these things. let me see. So f-stop, I'm gonna change, and that's a good thing. It's a variable aperture, as you can see. So I can get my shutter speed. Oop, I want ISO set to 100 to let in the least amount of light, or not to let in, to make the sensor the least sensitive to light, I should say. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get my shutter speed down. This would be better for film or for shooting video, but that's what is great about the aperture. We can go ahead and kind of cruise. And let's go and take a shot. But that's how you get it out of auto mode. And now if we go and look at this little 2-bar thing below the settings icon in the top upper right, it will show you we don't have that bracket now. So we only have single burst, and then it says auto exposure bracket not available in pro mode, which is kind of unfortunate, but I think that's just the way it brackets. It has to do it when it's in auto mode, auto exposure mode. But we're gonna go down and cruise. I'm watching the drone. I probably should turn on obstacle avoidance just to play it safe. I've gotten a little too comfortable and ran into issues. So if you are flying and you don't really have a reason to keep it off, keep it on. It will be a godsend. So here we can see we got to the left to shoot. We got 1 time, 2 time, 4 time, which I probably would avoid just because it's not going to be a great file because it's a digital zoom. So I'm going to keep it set to 1 time right now. And this isn't really a big walkthrough. I just want to kind of go through a few things that kind of confused me. Portrait mode, I don't even know about. I guess that's for portraits of yourself. We got quick shot, active track, which I haven't used. So I'm not a big active track guy, so I probably won't even use this too often. Quick shot, we have fadeaway, flick, rocket, orbit. I probably won't use this that often either, and I probably won't use portrait mode that often. So to me, there should be something more simple to get into, like maybe a pro mode and an auto mode, as opposed to just shoot. I mean, shoot kind of is goofy in my opinion. And then we have hyperlapse, and then we have pano, and then we have night. So to me, we got too many settings over here. It just seems kind of messy. I don't know. I don't like this part of the app. We can go ahead and get a little video. See, it's like, where do I get video? Do I get video and shoot? I guess so. So there we go. We got, it just seems a little bit messy. So now we got, okay, so I thought I had it set to 11. I don't, apparently. And then we're going to take our shutter speed and try to get it ideally to like a 50th of a second. We're going to look at the histogram. Like the histogram's not even showing, it's like grayed out. So that's kind of weird too. Do you see that? It should be white and it's like it's gray. I could see something there, but it should be white and easily visible. So let me go ahead and play around with that. I'm going to go ahead and, do I want to go and change my f-stop? I'm going to tap that. Is it even moving? Let me see. Yeah, it's moving. So it's working. It's just very hard to see. So that's kind of a weird little thing. So let me see right below that settings icon where the 2 little bars are. That's going to get me into the photo settings. So I'm going to be 6K, 24 frames per second, and that's it. Take photos while shooting video. I'm not going to keep that enabled. And then I'm going to go and cruise and try to get some video. I'll get some video going backwards. Let me see. We have it in standard mode right now. And let's just see how this looks. Kind of cruising. I don't know where the drone is. I can see it. Raise up an altitude a little bit. And right now I'm shooting, as we said, 6K, normal color, 8-bit. And 24 frames per second. So we'll see how this looks. I'll put this maybe in the opening of the video just as a little visual of the 6K footage. There we go. We're going to go a little higher. It looks to me like it's overexposed a bit, but at the same time, the histogram doesn't show that. So it's kind of confusing, but we'll see. I'll take a picture. You can take a picture right with that little white button so you know. So if you stop and you see something, you can hit that little white button similar to an iPhone when you're shooting video, and that's that.
Stop recording.
But this whole area to shoot and to get into manual settings to me is a little bit, I just don't like this. Like right now it says auto. Like what's auto? Do I have to tap auto? I guess so. There we go. So now it's not auto, it's ISO 100. So everything is off. If I go to shutter speed by tapping the S, it says no auto, F11. So that's essentially white balance is not auto. So everything is manual right now, hence the pro mode in the bottom right-hand corner. And really that's it. I just want to kind of go through a little bit of the settings and my initial feedback on it. The drone feels good. The controller doesn't feel that amazing, but it feels much nicer to the Nano Plus, and it does seem like it will be a good backup drone to the EVO 2 Pro 6K or the EVO 2 Pro 6K Enterprise. So if you guys do want a backup drone, I would definitely choose the Lite Plus because of the same kind of camera quality. And if you have clients and you're shooting stuff and they really like what you're handing them off with the 6K EVO 2 Pros, this Lite Plus will be a great drone to kind of have that people won't really notice any kind of difference and have the same similar type flying experience. So that's really it. Just wanted to talk a teeny bit about the Lite Plus and my first impressions. And so far, I think a pretty solid drone, a little bit more money. I think Autel has their Father's Day sale going on until tomorrow. So if you haven't picked one up, this is probably the time to save a couple $100. I think it's $180 off the Lite Plus. So that's it, guys. Aloha, subscribe, hit the thumbs up button if it helped, and peace. All right, bye.